Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Oasis. Who's been here before for a monthly music meeting? All right. Were you guys, did you happen to be here when Dean was here, Dean Bernardini? Okay, Dean is the bassist in Chevelle. Sam Leffler is the drummer, and he and Pete are pretty responsible for the writing of the music, right?
Yeah, we all are. I mean,
Dean draws the music.
he does a lot.
Yes. As you know, the Oasis is a nonprofit organization that's run expressly for the people in the Grays Lake area and really all of Lake County to enjoy, so that there's a safe place to come and hang out and just be kids and listen to music. We really, really encourage original music because we believe that that activity stimulates the creativity, gives everybody an outlet for their thoughts and their emotions, and we take great pleasure in hosting bands here and giving them a place to play. So Greg has been running these meetings now for over a year, isn't it? About a year? About a year. And he's done a great job. Every month we have pizza for everybody. Tonight being a little bit special with having Sam here, we also have a drawing, which hopefully everybody put a ticket in for. And we'll be giving away some T-shirts as well as an autographed drumhead from Chevelle. And we're going to give you the opportunity to have conversations with Sam, open-ended questions about whatever you'd like to talk to him about music. And he's been gracious enough to come and spend some time with us. He's just returned from a European tour where they were in Paris, Belgium, Europe. Sold out at all the locations they played at, as they normally do. They've toured extensively in Australia as well as all over the United States. So he has a lot of experience that he's more than happy to share. So with that, I'm going to hand the microphone over to Greggy. And I do call him Greggy. Isn't that cute? And let him take over. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you for being here, Sam.
Sit up here.
Actually, I'll sit right here.
Great. Yeah.
Because it's a little,
Yeah. Separate.
Is this me?
It is.
All
Figure
right.
this. We can hand around as needed.
Okay, good. How's everybody doing? I know it's cold out, so not a lot of people showed up. Yes. Gets better.
Okay, I have, make sure this is on. I have probably about 15 pages of questions. So, but I figured, I'll just
Yeah.
pass them around as
Yeah.
anyone, if anyone.
So, would the
has
people
any-
submit questions or something?
Yeah, I'll just hand the mic. So if anyone has a question, raise your hand and I'll.
Yeah. And you certainly don't have to, but there's no stupid question. I don't know. Is everyone here musicians? Everyone? So you guys, everybody's some form of writer or musician or something? No, not so much? Well, that's important because I think as musicians we have other questions that other people may not understand that come into problems. And so who's in bands? Anybody? Nice. That's great. I mean, this is a strange time for music. And you can, right now is an amazing time because I'm obviously older than you guys, and you can find any question that you have, you can find an answer for it. Obviously, asking me is a little bit different than asking Google. You're going to get a different answer, but you really have the option of doing anything that you want as far as artistic, right? And so being able to be a musician, you can learn so much so quickly, whereas before you weren't able to. And there's a great documentary on a band in the early 80s called The Minutemen, and he's talking about when he was kids, there was no Guitar Center. There was really only pawn shops, or you could go to an actual guitar manufacturer and buy it from the shop. So at the pawn shops, they would buy these guitars, but they didn't know how to tune them. So they would tune them to records. And you know how records are 45 and 33, and if you put a record on the wrong setting, it plays it fast or slow, right? So these guys were playing these records. They're big records, but they were playing them real slow, not knowing that because they'd never heard the music before. So they're tuning their guitars to, obviously it's completely wrong, but there's no way for them to know, because, I mean, how would you? Who are you going to ask? Especially the guy in the pawn shop doesn't know. So you guys don't have to deal with any of that stuff. I didn't really have to deal with it either. I have the Guitar Center. So, but the point being that you literally can have anything answer that you want. So knowing that some of you guys are in bands and they're all musicians, what kind of question would you have regarding those things? It can be anything. It doesn't have to be like, what's it like to tour Europe? One thing at a time, right? Anybody have any questions about songwriting? There you go. Make it awkward and talk in the mic.
Like, what's just your songwriting process like, and what do you do when you kind of want to break away from writing a song and just kind of like the conventional way?
It's on. You're good.
Okay.
That's a good question. Well, I have two answers for you. One is I learned really early on that there was this dude who was a guitar teacher, and he loved Van Halen, and all he did was play Van Halen, and he knew every single Van Halen song perfectly. But then he was never able to write a song because everything sounded like Van Halen. So keeping that in mind when you're writing, you don't want to just immerse yourself in one genre, especially one artist completely, because that will come back and bite you. But as far as the writing process, everybody does it differently. I'm a big believer in that somebody, if you have a band, say 3, 4, 5 people, whatever, when whoever has that vision first, the other people in the band need to sort of follow his vision through and get something together and have it work, and then start working on it backwards. Because 5 people's opinions don't work at one time, or 3 people's for the most part. So our process is usually somebody will have a piece. It's usually Pete. He writes 99% of everything, and he brings us a part of a song. And when he first writes something, mostly on guitar, acoustic, electric, he will determine a melody. So that is to say, not necessarily lyrics, but so if you have a riff, whatever that 3 chords are, he finds a melody. You can just hum it or whatever, and then tries to make lyrics fit to to that melody. Once he has a whole structure of whether it's a verse, a chorus, a bridge, an intro, whatever it is, then he can bring it to Dean and me, and we can try and find other parts that fit to that. So every single part is a little piece at a time. So once you determine whether that is a verse, chorus, whatever it is, there's a melody, and maybe there's 1 or 2 lines of lyrics, then you start to piece things on the edges of it. And sometimes a song will end up with a verse and a chorus, can't find a bridge or an outro, and it'll sit there for months and months, or it will be abandoned completely, or we'll take both those parts and use them for other songs because we can't find something that fits to it. That's probably a long and drawn out, complicated answer.
No, that makes sense.
Did it make sense? All right. Yeah. So my best advice about that is definitely follow somebody's vision in the songwriting process. Follow it through as long as they have a vision for it and they can keep going. If they stop and they're stuck, of course, you help out. But that's my best advice about that. Anybody else? You're up.
I don't know if you'd be able to answer this question because I think Pete writes a lot of the lyrics.
Yeah, he writes all the lyrics, yeah.
But how, I guess if he goes through the process of writing a song and then goes through it, does he ever go back and change the lyrics? He doesn't feel right about it.
Yeah.
I guess how often does that happen? That's the trouble I'm having is I can write a lot of the song part musically,
Yeah.
but I can't get the lyrics down. And when I do, I'll look at it the next day and I'll be like, I don't know why I wrote that. Let's try something else.
Yeah. I get that. Yeah, he's changing lyrics constantly. Nothing's ever done until you're trying to change it and can't get out of it. That's basically how it works. So when it's actually recorded and somebody pushes you out of the studio, it's done. So it's constantly changing. When Pete's writing lyrics, we'll write together sometimes and he'll ask for help. He has a thesaurus in front of him, 2 thesauruses, and a dictionary, actual books, and his phone. So we're constantly looking up words, trying to find different words for a meaning. And then trying to stay away from cliches. Cliches, and I can tell you guys this, don't use cliches in songs, because anybody can do it. It's like rhyming. A first grader can rhyme, right? It's the first thing we teach kids. So if you can stretch your writing beyond the rhyme, and that doesn't mean that you can't rhyme, it just means try not to and do it on purpose rather than because you can't come up with something else. That's a better way to say it. We did a record called This Type of Thinking Could Do Us In. There's no rhyming on the entire record, and it was an exercise in just forcing our hands backwards, and it took a long time to do because a lot of times rhymes are right, but you want to do them on purpose. So I guess, yes, keep changing the lyrics until they're right, you know?
Yeah, that's what
Yeah.
I'm trying not to fall into the cliche.
Yes, and especially in music right now, if we go back and listen to music, I mean, most of the huge popular songs that were number ones are a cliche, you know? I mean, Jay-Z is a huge writer, right? Cliches, like crazy cliches. And, I mean, that sucks. It sucks for me, man, because that's supposed to be somebody that is writing for people, and rather than just giving people the lowest common denominator, sort of being able to understand it. So, yeah.
I got a sub question on that.
Yeah.
Talking about like avoiding rhymes for
Mm.
one entire record. Have you done any other similar exercises? Not necessarily about lyrics, but just in general, like brought in a concept to a record where like we're going to try and do this or avoid this for the length of the record.
Oh, that's a good question. I mean, nothing that really comes to mind. I don't think we've necessarily done that on purpose again. Man, we've written a lot of songs. I think we've published 90-something songs at this point. And it's really getting hard to write a song that doesn't sound like another song you've written. It's going to happen eventually. Every band, it happens. It doesn't matter if it's Smashing Pumpkins or Rolling Stones specifically. If you listen to Rolling Stones songs, in the Beatles too for that matter, most of their big hits is the same thing over and over. It just keeps going, and they just change, they'll just change the key or something, or it's the same verse and the same chorus. It's identical. And I mean, some of our most popular songs are like that. That is totally off the subject.
That's good.
Yeah.
Wilder, you had a question?
No, it's the same thing.
Oh, well then. Okay, here we go.
Yeah, I like the songwriting questions too because I'm probably safe in assuming that nobody here has a successful career in music yet. Right? So songwriting is So songwriting is important. Like now's the time when you really need to spend that time learning it. Yeah.
What would you say was the hardest part starting out as the band? Like right at the beginning?
The hardest part of starting out as a band.
Yeah.
I mean, those are equally hard things. As a band, it's difficult to find a place to practice. It's difficult to find time for all your band members to actually hook up and be able to do it. Especially as you get older, you have girlfriends, and college becomes more important, and all those kinds of things. Finding a way to actually get your music on tape is easier now than it ever has been in history. That being said, you all have to show up to do it, and everyone else can do the same thing. So then you got to stand out with your demo or your EP. You got to stand out so that you can get it to somebody, and they'll listen to it and go, "Oh, this is kind of curious. I need a band to open up for 4 other bands at Monday night at midnight." Can they do it? Because those are the gigs you get first, and they're brutal because there's 4 people there, and that's okay. But those are all equally hard parts. I'm trying to think of what the hardest thing was. I never expected to be in a band for the rest of my, or for the adult part of my life. So I didn't really matter, that those things were hard. And I think when we first got signed to our first label, it was a little company called Squint Entertainment out of Nashville, and they were owned by a publishing company called Gaylord Entertainment, which owns like the Opryland Hotel and what is that called? Is that right? Dollywood. They own that too. Yeah, they own a whole bunch of stuff. It's a huge company. Well, they also have people like, well, back then it was like John Tesh and Amy Grant and these big like adult contemporary artists. Anyway, so when we got signed to that company, it was like '98, I think, and oh man, I'm doing math in my head. So I was 23 years old, maybe 22, something like that, and I'd given myself up till 25 in order to make some sort of, I don't know, connection, so that, because I kept putting things off. It was in high school, and I was in college, and then I went and worked in a factory, and I gave up that job, which was a good gig. I was a manager in a factory printing payroll checks, of all things, and I went to work for my dad as a remodeler, and so I did that so that I could take off at noon on Friday and go play shows, or any day of the week, because you're lucky to get a Friday night show ever. And sometimes you're driving 4 hours to wherever, or you go into Joliet or Peoria, or play some civic center with some other local bands that have put together like 7-band bill, and they all want to share a drum kit and amps, and you each get 17 minutes. And so you're doing all these things, all these really crappy gigs, but they're helping you as a band. They're helping you figure out what it is that's important to you. And so that I gave myself till 25, because I figured by the time I'm 25, I got to get some kind of a life, because I think I was in debt, maybe $26,000, $27,000 in credit card debt from buying gas, trying to get to shows, just general stuff, trying to make demos and things like that. You have to spend that money, and I was working full time and going to school part time sometimes. So I'd say probably the hardest time was that time when I was like 22, 23, and I knew that I had like a little bit longer where I could really make, and then I had to sort of like stop-ish so that I could have a life, other than just a broken down $3,500 van and no bed. So yeah, that's another long drawn out way. Yeah, I'm making these questions last, so.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Who do you listen to for inspiration when you're like on the road, when you're stuck in the tour bus?
Oh,
What
gosh.
do you listen to?
That's a good question, Joyce.
That's a great question.
So, I don't listen to music, actually. That is the short answer, because it's like work to me at this point, because you start breaking things down and all that. And I was like that for a long time, where I didn't listen to any new bands. I only listened to the stuff that I grew up with. And the stuff that I sort of stopped with was things like Soundgarden and but those kind of types of bands at that time, and I sort of stopped listening to music because everything to me sounded like I just picking it apart. It was like work, and I wasn't enjoying it. It's like counting the steps as you walk up and down the steps. You're just counting them all the time, and it got really old. And then I started to, like my brother was bringing these different bands, and I found some really crazy stuff. Like, this is just as an example, but a band called Every Time I Die, and they wrote this first record, which was stream of consciousness writing, no verses, no choruses. It's just garbage out onto a paper, and it works so well. It's awesome, and you had no idea where it was going to go. So that led me very pretentiously to jazz, which is great because you have no idea where it's going to go. And then it came back around, so I started listening to some other stuff that I started to find that I really like people's voices. That's important to me, is the singer, what the singer is, what that melody is, and the intensity and lyrics. I listen to a lot of lyrics because I don't like simple stuff. I like somebody who's put the time into it and is some not necessarily complicated but just interesting. So then I found different bands that I'm just kind of, if I had my, like, I could look at my iTunes and figure out what I have, but like the Bronx and I'm totally blanking, and I just have to look at my iTunes. But as a whole, like as a genre, I don't branch out very much, other than some pretty wicked rock, almost metal-ish, and then some jazz stuff. That's not to say that's the way to go. Don't let your genre define you as a musician. Like, you can benefit from every single kind of music. I just got frustrated, I think, because the genre that I'm in, which is basically rock music, specifically would be melodic hard rock music. The people that we have in our genre, it's pretty rough. Like, it's the shallow end. It's very, very shallow in water, very simplistic, and a lot of people who care more about their leather pants and eyeliner than they do about writing a good song. And that's a hard thing, but it's the reality, and I'm not the first person to say it, so screw it. Yeah. Also a long, drawn-out answer. Yeah.
I asked Sam a long time ago, I'm going to throw this in there, if country music is music. Because it's an argument that we had in my office for a long time. Brian over there worked in my office for years. And
I'm sure I said something really smart.
You did. You said, no, country music's not music. And I said, yes, I win. But that was the first time that after your description of how it's written, that was the first time I ever sat and critically listened to music for something other than enjoyment. And I can see how that would be.
Since you brought that up, does anybody know what the Nashville number system is?
Country music calculator.
Yeah. So there you go. Score. So Nashville number system is a way to write a country music hit song. And if you look it up, you guys go look it up on Google, you can see it. And if you pick any song, and it doesn't just work for country, it works for pop music in general.
It's for pop.
Yeah. Country music now at this point is pop music. Either it's Hank Williams or Hank 3, or it's pop country, right? Because that's just the reality of what people, they need to be spoon-fed their country music. Anyway, that's an interesting thing. Look up the Nashville number system and you realize how easy it is to, it's just like paint by numbers. It's exactly the same thing, and it works because as music aficionados or lovers or appreciators, all of us have something that we're drawn to, that we recognize in music, and we hear something that we already know in something. That's why we like it first. So if you only allow that part of your brain to open up, you're only going to hear that same thing over and over again. Not that it's necessarily bad, but since I like Every Time I Die, I'm gonna hear some other bands that are similar and hear some dude screaming over a super fast double kick thing, and I'm gonna be like, oh. And then I might hopefully find something new in that. But yeah, you can't only do that. You do have to kind of branch out a little bit. Yeah. See, I can just go on forever.
That's fine.
It's kind of my thing. Anybody else?
I have a question.
Mhm.
Lately, last week, 2 weeks, there's been a lot of back and forth on streaming sites. Taylor Swift pulled all of her songs, and then Dave Grohl has his side, which was just go play shows, let people hear your music and play a show.
Yeah.
Where do you stand on the state of streaming music?
Yeah. Does anybody here buy any records? Anybody? You don't have to lie to me. Yeah. And that's okay. If you don't, you don't. That's just that's the state of what exists. It's not your fault that you don't buy music. It's just the reality of it. But that's good that you do too, because there's still a value to it. And even if you don't buy music, doesn't mean you don't think there's a value to it. It's just the value's lower. And not just to you, but to everybody. Because the value is lower, right? So who here is willing to pay $5 for a record, entire record? But wait, let me finish. So you're willing to pay $5 for a record that's also free. Right? You'd pay the $5? Radiohead did that a couple years ago, right?
Yeah.
Do you know what happened?
Yeah.
What did they do?
Well, for In Rainbows,
Yeah.
yeah, what they did is first off, it wasn't promoted. They just put it
Right.
up on the internet with zero backing. They'd just gotten out of their contract.
Right.
And when they did it, initially it was just pay what you want.
Pay what you want, right?
Change.
I think there was a recommended, $5 is good, but pay whatever.
Yeah.
You know what percentage paid something?
I don't remember.
It was the same as what is now. It's 1%, basically, is my understanding. I could be a little bit off on the math, but they did sign a deal not long after that.
Yeah.
Because if somebody can get something for free, why are they going to pay for it? Especially when, most people are on a pretty limited amount of money, right? I mean, I get it. So, the state of music. Do you guys know? You guys know how many people win the lottery every week? $1 million lottery. There's 50 lotteries, normal lotteries in the country. 50 states.
I'm guessing it's 100% in this room that don't.
Right. That's yeah. So every state there's a winner every week. Millions of dollars. It doesn't mean it's $100 million. It might be $1 million, $1.2 million, but there's basically every state every week. So do that math. That's what 2,500. Is that right? 2,500 people a year win $1 million or more in the lotteries. Plus, there's a lot of people who win less than $1 million. I have a point. So, do you know how many successful rock bands there are a year? Successful meaning just even the most moderate success. Like 1. Maybe 2 or 3, depending on the year. And then if you put all the genres together, maybe you're talking about 8, 10. That's not very good. And that's not designed to make you stop playing music and go play the lottery at all. What it is that the people that are having success are writing music that people want. So that's my point, is what it comes down to is your music. What are you writing? Is it good? Do you like it? Does other people like it? Is there a point to it? And something's not good just because you do it. We all know that, right? Just because we made the painting by numbers doesn't mean it's any good. So that means that we really have to put time into our songwriting. And I guarantee that any one of your bands could be hugely successful if you write music that's good, that's interesting. And I don't mean good to everybody. Not everyone's not going to like it. But I'm saying this as hope. I think it's a good thing. Because you can't suck. Well, you can suck. But you can't really suck to have a long career. And, I mean, you can say, oh, I hate Marilyn Manson. But Marilyn Manson doesn't suck, even if you hate his music. He's still good at what he does, I like Marilyn Manson, personally. But that's just me. Did I make a good point here? Or am I confusing you guys? I'm talking in circles, aren't I?
Sounds good.
Keep going.
Yeah. So, okay, so the rest of it on the internet, she pulled all of her music off. It's because of money. The way that Spotify and all these different streaming sites pay, it's not like if you buy a record on iTunes, you pay $10 for it. It's basically 10 songs. You pay $1 a song, roughly. The artist has a probably a 13-point split with their label. That is, they're making 13 cents on the dollar, which is $1.30 per $10 record, minus all the expenses, which is everything that's ever existed. So they're not making anything, But basically, that's how they're paid. And as somebody like, what was her name, Taylor Swift? Yeah, I knew that. I was going to say Miley Cyrus. So Taylor Swift obviously sells millions of records, so that $1.30 per record accumulates quickly. So when you don't buy a record and you listen to it on Spotify, they pay they pay a percentage of that. So you don't get paid for a song or for a record. You get paid for how many people listen to that song. But it's it's a minuscule amount, and the reason is because the federal government hasn't changed the way that this stuff's calculated, because it was never set up. It happens so much faster than anybody can regulate it. And not that, besides, if somebody tries to regulate it, what happens? Everybody starts screaming freedom of speech, and the internet is free, and you're not supposed to be able to regulate, which is true too. I'm talking in circles again. But that's why she pulled it off. It was just because of money. And I get it, when you have something that you create yourself, it has some value to you. And if somebody takes that from you and gives it to everybody, you're pissed. You're like, I want to be able to give that. Even if I want to give it away for free, I want to be the one that does it. And at the end of the day, you don't have that freedom.
Understood.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like a continuation of the other question. But isn't it up to her whether it gets put on there in the first place or not?
That's
Or
sort of a complicated question.
Record company kind of decides.
Yeah,
or-
because when you have a record company, you have two things. You have writer shares and things like that, which is your whole publishing side, and those are the people who actually they don't track it, but they're actually the ones who put it out. They actually release it, so they keep record of it and everything. And then the record company is the actual hard copy of it. It's so complicated. It's likely that she literally owns very little of anything. And for all intents and purposes, we also own very little of what we do too. But that's the trade-off you have. The reason people sign with record labels now is not because they're going to make any money doing it. It's because you want the promotion for your band. You want the promotion for your music. And that machine still exists. You'll find people on the internet all day long, and they're going, independent, be independent. You don't need all that stuff. And that's true. You don't need all that stuff. And there will be a few people that will have some success without all of that, those special things that show up on the internet and stuff.
A Day to Remember just released an album independently, and it was really successful.
Was it?
Yeah.
Do you know what it sold first week?
No idea.
I don't know either. Does anybody have some sort of device that they could ask? Somebody find out what A Day to Remember's record sales are for first week. I'm curious. I'm sure it was doing well, and they're one of the bigger bands in their genre. Yeah, and they're a good band. I played with a couple of shows with them over the summer actually.
92,874 was the first week.
Really?
Yeah.
That's stunning. That would be number one top 200 record, depending on what came out. If it was Miley Cyrus or something, maybe not.
Actually, it said first, and I just gathered it said week.
It could be.
It could be.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure.
That's stunning nowadays. I remember Deftones' White Pony came out, and they sold I remember it was 390,000 their first week, and it wasn't even close to being number one. I don't think. Back when you could sell 1 million records, Linkin Park could come out and sell, 1.1 million records the first week. How do you even physically get those records in the stores? That's a lot of records. So each record store, which barely exists anymore anyway, but each record store had to have boxes. I mean, you know what 1 million CDs looks like? I mean, you take up this whole room. So how do you physically get that stuff in there and actually get it to the customer that fast? That's amazing.
Back in the day, how much of your income would be from records, and how much would be from just playing shows and touring?
I make zero from records, and I always have. Yeah.
So you guys make all your money from touring then, pretty much?
Yeah, and publishing. So publishing is the one that's complicated. I don't even know how to explain what publishing is, but publishing is two things. It's basically it's melody and lyrics, and you own those things. Those are your intellectual property. Those are yours to sell if you want to.
So who do you sell to, the record company?
Well, we have a partner, which is Warner Chappell, part of the Warner company, and they track and distribute and all that kind of stuff, and they look for licenses and things like that for us, so we work with them. So publishing, while there is no physical product, there's nothing to grab onto, you make money from from that. But your record, where there is a physical product, you don't make anything from it. But I mean, it all depends on what you spend too. Somebody was telling me the other day about this band, and I think they got a record bonus of $500,000, but it took them. They have that $500,000. So the record company gives it to them, but they have to pay that back through record sales. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
There's a book called This Business of Music. It explains all this, so I won't go super into it. But they had like $500,000, and then they used that money to put themselves up in apartments and go into the studio and pay the studio costs every day to write in the studio and to record. By the time they got done with that, it took them 9 months or whatever. All the money was gone, right? And they basically got nothing. But if you were to take that $500,000 that the record label gives you, which nobody gives you $500,000 anymore, but if you were to take that and keep writing at your house or whatever, get it all together, and then go only spend like a couple weeks or a month or in the studio, spend $100,000, then that $400,000 would be your money, and then you would technically make something off your record.
That reminds me of something because there's a band. They're not huge, but and I'm not saying this is like a good thing that they did this, but when they got their first record deal, their band called Rings of Saturn, I don't know if you've heard of them. They actually took all the money that the record company gave them, and their guitar player recorded the whole album on his computer.
Yeah.
And they just pocketed it wasn't a lot of money. It was like, I mean, it is.
Well,
a lot
still,
of
I mean,
money,
it'd be
but it's
20
not
grand's a lot of money.
It was like $6,000.
Yeah, $6,000 still, it's better than nothing.
They bought a tour bus.
Yeah, that's great. I remember this is years ago in Albini's studio when we did Point Number One, our first record, and he had just done this Swedish band, and the record company was crazy about giving them all this money, and they didn't need it, but if they didn't spend it, they didn't get it, so they put a pool in at the studio. And it was like $35,000. But they wouldn't have gotten the money anyway, so they're like, well, we might as well put a pool in here, and they did. It was a great pool. Yeah, it's nice.
Oh yeah, I got a question. You've worked with some pretty awesome producers.
Yeah, some good ones. And some bad
You
ones.
shed some light on some of the positives or negatives of working with guys like Albini or Barisi. Or any
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, everybody know what a producer does? I mean, for the most
They
part.
better.
Yeah.
We've talked about this.
Yeah. Well, yeah, so a producer for like a rock band is a little bit different than somebody, say, Britney Spears, right? So a producer, technically for Britney Spears, is going to go and help put writers in place to help write those songs for her. And they're going to find musicians, and they're going to find the studio, and then they're going to find the engineer, they're going to hire the engineer, and then they're going to compile all those different elements, and they're going to try and make a record out of that. And then as the record's going, they're going to get involved in how the songs are developed and things like that. That's more in pop music and hip hop and things like that. You're going to have that more because they need that stuff. Whereas with just like being in a band, a rock band, it's a lot less. It's more about the songs, right? It's more about helping you develop your songs, pushing you to write a better song, helping you specifically, because most producers are engineers too. At least the ones I like are. So they're going to help you to find the tones, to find the right gear, guitars and amps, and they're going to know, like a good engineer, a good producer knows right where, he doesn't have to try and figure it out. He sees an amp, he says, I know that amp, this is how it sounds good, and it's done. And that saves you tons and tons of time, rather he's having to try to figure out each piece of gear, or something like that. But, yeah, so producers, we worked with Steve Albini on our first record. Do you guys know who Albini is? Anybody? He's sort of a indie legend. He's a good dude. He's very he's just himself. We had a ton of fun with him. He liked to tell stories about Dave Grohl and about Nirvana guys, and he had just done that Zeppelin record, that Page and Plant record, one back then. So he had a lot of good stories, and he has his own way of doing everything. He makes his own microphones and his DI boxes, and everything in his studio is analog. Back then, everything was tape, which is weird because everything now is tape. Everybody's going back to do 2-inch. Everything's Studers starting to skyrocket in price again. But he was a good dude. It was complicated because Albini's an engineer, not a producer, so he doesn't get involved in your writing. So he'll say, okay, go, and then you do your thing, and he'll say, are you done? Okay. One time he fell asleep, but he drank a lot of coffee, so he must have known that he was going to fall asleep. But yeah, so he was a very different kind of producer, very engineer, and when you go to him and say, I need help with this, does this sound better, does this sound better, he's happy to say, I like this better, but it's up to you. Whereas, you know, the guy we used after that for Wonder What's Next was a guy named Garth. Does anybody know Garth? He did like Mudvayne and yeah, he did Rage Against the Machine's first record and did a bunch of pretty big time records, like 4 or 5 really good records. I think did he do Chili Peppers?
I think so.
Yeah, and I hated that guy. Yeah, he was like the Emperor's New Clothes. Everybody was like, oh, he's just a drug addict. Just a total waste of time. I don't mind saying that because I've already gotten the phone call from him. Stop talking bad about me. Well, you stink. But we met a good guy who was our engineer on that record, a guy named Elvis Michael Basquet. And he ended up producing our next 2 records, This Type of Thinking and Being a Syrah. We had a lot of fun with him. And he has very much his own style. Elvis has done a bunch of crazy weird records. One of his biggest records was that Incubus record. Anybody know, you guys know Incubus?
Yeah.
What was the name of that big record they did?
Yeah.
Was it?
Is it Morning View?
Yeah, Morning View. So he was the engineer on that record. The producer quit like the first week, so he actually produced that whole record, engineered it. But I don't think he got the producer credit for that.
Bummer.
Well, you know, that's what it is. But so he has his own thing, but we did some really cool stuff with him. That was our first record in Los Angeles, and we did it at a place called Sunset Sound, which was like where the Doors and Van Halen and Jimi Hendrix and all these people did these huge records. And that was a lot of fun. And then our next record we actually did in Las Vegas in the Palms Casino, which we lived in the casino for a month, and oh my gosh, I saw some stuff, man. But it was great because we had our own elevator between the studio, and the studio was on the 3rd floor. So we take the regular elevator up to the 3rd floor, go into the studio, take the studio elevator down, and it was actually behind the clubs, and there was a private elevator for VIPs, and we could take that up, and it came up in the 4 clubs up there. So we would go up to these clubs at like 1 o'clock in the morning, and we were behind all the security guards and stuff. And so they just thought we were supposed to be there because who's going to get into the elevator? And we were supposed to be. We got found out in about 2 weeks. But, man, it was a lot of fun for a little while. They had just opened up some crazy clubs there. So we would go down at 3 in the morning or so, and we would go down and we would sit in the Palms Casino in like the foyer where the valet was and everything, and just watch the drama unfold. And you just sit there for like an hour and just watch people get in fights. It was great. Oh, I kind of missed that part of it. Okay, so when we did Sci-Fi Crimes, which was trying to get back to because I think our sound kind of became too polished and everything, and that was sort of the style for the time. It definitely was, yeah. I mean, and so we wanted to go back, and so we did some stuff on tape as much as we could on that, but we didn't have the gear for it, and we did that record in Nashville with this dude. I'm blanking on his name right now. Oh, Brian, that's his name. And he did 30 Seconds to Mars records up to this last one, I think. And Brian Virtue. And he's a good dude, but we were out in the middle of nowhere, Nashville, and like a horse farm in this barn. And but I think the record came out. It sounded like its own record. And then we found Joe Barisi, who did Hats Off to the Bull and this record with us. And he was just the best in Pasadena. And you go into his studio, and his studio is like the size of this. Right? It's probably it. That's everything. It's not very big. And it's literally packed to the ceiling with aisles. You have to walk between gear, and it's all this analog gear and a couple of tape machines. So we did both these last 2 records on 2-inch, but hats off to the Bull. We only did the music on it because the 2-inch machine broke. We couldn't get it fixed. But this last record, we did the whole thing on tape, which is a lot more work. Anybody ever worked with tape before? Anybody? Yeah, you have, of course. Yeah. Anybody? Are any drummers here? Okay, that sucks because you get 1 try, and then if something's not good, then you either got to live with it or you got to do it again. So it takes all day to do 1 song on drums, and you all of a sudden you realize you played it 15 times, but it's 15 times at full blast because the producer wants to make sure every single hit is exactly, or at least intense enough to not be a little bit weird. So you're playing, thinking about everything, scanning everything, and then making sure every hit is the same. And then you're trying to make every single fill identical, but at the same time you're thinking, I want to try this different. And then you do that different, and he says, okay, now we have to do that again because you did that part different. It takes forever. It's really frustrating. But it sounds cool when it's done. And it really does. It does really sound cool. Yeah, so Barisi's done, like, you guys should look him up. He has a 1-sheet that will blow your mind. Some of my favorite records ever,
Yeah.
Queens of the Stone Age, and he did that freaking whole record that Billy Corgan wrote. That was an amazing record. I mean, did all the Melvins records and Clutch and
Tool.
He did a Tool record. Yeah, and he did anyway, he's a pretty good producer. If you have the means, I highly recommend trying him. Yeah. So he's still our current producer.
Awesome.
Yeah, he's a good dude. I'm kind of babbling here. Are there any more just anything like having to do with your band or any of that kind of stuff? I mean, it doesn't have to be a complicated question either. It's like,
I do all my own albums and stuff. I have a 1 EP a month project. And,
nice.
I've been finding, like, as I've been I don't like new music too much. I'm really picky about it because I think, like you're saying, the records became more polished as you go on.
Yeah.
I'm starting to get tired of, like, really perfect sounding kick drums or snares. I like things sounding dirtier. Like, what makes production bad in your eyes, or like a really good production?
I think it's just interesting production. You know, I mean, I think when Jack White started doing those records, and that was real. Like those records really sounded like that. And then you had all these other producers who were trying to make it sound like that, and making it really complicated and everything. But he really makes those records sound like that, and he blows up some gear doing it. And I think it's interesting. If a kick drum doesn't do that, you know, we tend to look for that, but it doesn't mean that every song needs that. I agree with you. And you don't want your music to sound like everything else, and you're gonna wear your influences on your sleeves. That's just gonna happen. It's just the reality of it. But I see where you're going with it. I love that idea of trying to do something totally different. I mean, probably ultimately that's what we're all trying to do. So you have an EP a month project?
Yeah, it just got finished last month. So that's 12 EPs.
And so what, 6 songs per EP? 5? 4?
So like the max was about 3 songs.
Oh, okay.
So each of them are like 5-6 minutes long.
So you did 36 songs in a year?
Yeah, I did.
That's fantastic.
All because of Greg told me to do it or else.
Really? So, is it to say, did you like all the songs? I mean, they're your babies and all that. but-
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nothing got released. Greg was saying push some songs out, even though I didn't feel good about them. They didn't get released. I disobeyed that order. And I'm re-releasing, pretty much doing a greatest hits thing where all of them are going to be put on one record, and I'm just polishing them up, things I wasn't happy with, or songs that got lyrics that weren't published later, and
Mhm.
put the vocals back on.
Oh, nice. Oh, that's fantastic. That's good that you guys are able to work together and do that. Yeah, it takes so long to just sort of learn it on your own. To have somebody to help you right away is fantastic. When I started, my brother and I had no idea what we were doing, and we were just like, we would go to the music stores and just talk to people, try and figure it out and everything. And it's good that you have a little bit of a leg up, somebody helping you, especially with the hard parts. trying to figure out delay is. Well, it's
no,
math.
I've got that covered. Greg doesn't like my amount of reverb I put on the drum kit and everything. Kills him.
Yeah, I get that. Yeah. Are you a drummer, Greg?
Not really.
Yeah.
I can kind of like play some AC/DC and
Right.
stuff.
Yeah.
Like, I have a drum kit, but I feel terrible playing it.
Yeah.
I'm just not good at it.
That's okay. It's still fun, right?
It is.
Yeah.
Going back to like songwriting, have you ever felt where you guys wrote a song and you sounded like someone else, where you had to scrap it?
Oh yeah, man. I mean, that will happen. It's happened lots of times. We've finished whole songs and realized it's like that. It sounds like it's another song we've already written, and we're like, I can't believe I didn't hear that. That's why I liked it, because I already wrote it. Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, there'll be parts too that sound too much like something. I remember there was a Faith No More song that we had written this part, and we listened back to it, and it was almost the same. You know, it was in a different tuning, but it was almost the same. I was like, well, I mean, it is important to keep your library of music so that you don't write somebody else's song. You know, it's hard to hear it, but your best bet is to play it for other people. When they tell you, it kind of sounds like this, you'd be like, oh yeah, it does. Just believe them. Just believe them and change it. Yeah. Yeah, that gets hard. But what are you going to do? I mean, it doesn't matter what your band is. Somebody's going to tell you that you sound like something else. It's going to happen. And, I mean, that's fine. It's whatever. It's whatever it is.
You ever just change a part?
Yeah.
To make it not sound like that?
Absolutely. Yeah, it'd be like, that sounds too much like Led Zeppelin. Or whatever. It's just... I mean, singing's a big part of it, too. Melodically, people have certain ways that they just do things naturally. I like to use this example. Muse and Radiohead. Anybody listen to those bands? I know it's the second time I mentioned Radiohead. But if you listen to them next to each other, Muse is just, I mean, there's like a harder Radiohead. They're where Radiohead should have gone. And I'm not taking anything away from it. I love Muse and I love Radiohead. And it doesn't, to me, I don't think that it's bad that they sound similar at all. They sound different enough that I know who's who. But those singers do sound alike. You know, it's just, but I think that's what they really sound like. I'm not trying to sound like anybody. That's just what he sounds like. That's kind of harsh, but it's what it is. Yeah.
Glad you guys have questions. This is nice.
You can wear me out. That's all right.
My band actually, we finally finished up an EP, and
Mhm.
we're actually trying to go into a studio in Chicago soon.
Mhm.
Do you have any suggestions for going in and like,
Yeah.
testing out everything?
Well, I want to make a point. I was talking about 2-inch and about tape and all that stuff. Throw that away. You don't have to do that. They're not at the point in your career. Those things are luxuries at this point. And I know it's cool for Dave Grohl to do these movies that he does and stuff, and it is cool. It's so rad. But that guy has every resource at his fingertips, and he'll tell you that. And I guarantee you that if you were to ask him and say, "Man, I can't really get it together to do 2-inch," he'd be like, "Dude, use Pro Tools. It's fine. It's totally fine. It's going to be great." Someday when you have the choice, that's cool. I don't think Dave Grohl's ever suggesting that that's how people have to make music. And that side note. So if you're going in the studio, whenever you think you're ready, spend another month playing those songs. Like, so ready that it's annoying. You don't, like, I never want to play this song again. And then go in and do it, because it will be, you'll just save so much time and so much your own headache, you know? And I mean, have every part worked out. And if you go in the studio and you do it a little bit different, who cares? But just make sure that you're doing it different because that's the way you want to do it, not because you can't remember it or because you hadn't worked out a certain part or something. Preparation. There's some cliche for preparation. Luck favors the prepared. Is that it? I think it is. I'm looking at Joyce because she's smart.
We used to say luck favors those who move their feet.
Okay. Yes. There you go. Yeah. So preparation. And have your sound down. and all your dudes, make sure they've got what they want to do. Make sure they don't spend the engineer's time changing strings and things like that, because every hour is going to be expensive. And that guy's just waiting there going, losing interest in your band. And you want him to care, because you want him to say, I got a really good idea for this. Try this sound. And because he's probably going to know. If he's been doing it for a while, he's going to know some stuff. So, and a studio that is well equipped is nice too. So if they have amplifiers and guitars and drums that you don't have, because most people can't afford to have 9 different things to choose from, So if you go into the studio, if you have friends that are in bands and things, borrow some of their gear and go there with it just in case. When he's like, man, for some reason I'm getting a total buzz out of this head or out of this guitar. Well, I do have this other one. Let's try this. It's nice to have that stuff right there. And I'm sure your buddies, like if you play with other people and stuff, I'm sure they'll lend you their stuff if you need it. They're probably happy to. And I lend people stuff all the time. Even now, people call me and asking. My brother has a baritone collection, which people borrow, which is kind of cool. So, yeah, because not every studio can afford to have all that gear either. So, yeah, it's a good question.
You had one?
What's your opinion on things like programmable drums and just really that kind of maybe mechanical sound as far as production goes?
Well, I think if it fits the music, then that's great. It depends on what you're going for. I don't think there's anything that is bad or wrong when it comes to writing or to making music. If programmable drums work, then absolutely do them. If live drums work, programmable drums are nice too because it's so much easier and cheaper. Yeah, and it's hard to find good drummers. It's really hard to find good drummers. I've been playing for 26 years, and it takes me. It was taking me a day to do a song, and I was almost embarrassed at one point in front of Joe. I was like, "Man, I'm sorry, dude." He said, "Are you kidding me?" He said, "It's fine." He said, "Sometimes it takes me 3 days to get a snare sound." So, okay. So yeah. So whatever it is, it's fine. Just find the gear and borrow the gear or whatever and make that sound that works for you. Definitely.
Snare sound is important.
It is important, yes. And that's what a lot of people will end up using samples and things because it's faster, and most people can't afford $100 an hour or whatever, and just keep going and going. Like, you got it yet? Let me try this other compressor. Yeah. Yeah.
What's the reality for a young band, and they see someone like you, a successful musician? They have their CD on them, assuming that they still make they've made a CD.
Sure.
What's the reality if they give it to you? What happens next?
Honestly, I listen to everything that's ever been given me. Well, within reason. As long as it makes it back with me, then I listen to it. I don't think there's anything me or Pete or Dean would like more than to promote a band that we like. And we have. Janice is a band from Chicago that we've taken out several times. Back before Dean was in the band, he was in a band called Lift Point. We took those guys out. We've had several bands that have been Chicago bands that we've wanted to promote. I don't think music is just a means of making a living. Most musicians go their whole lives writing and playing music and never making any money from it, and it's completely fulfilling. And that's great. We need to be able to create something and put something out into the world that's positive. And and you are. Like, if you're writing, if you're playing, even if you're not writing, even just playing in a band or playing other people's music, you're still creating something. You're still being part of something. And anybody that cuts your stuff down is somebody that isn't putting anything out into the world. And that's the reality, because anyone who's put any time into making an EP or 12 EPs for that matter knows how much work it is and how much time and how important it is and how hard it is. So they're not going to go and just cut somebody else's crap down. And I mean, it's good that you're putting something out into the world. And if I get anything, yeah, that's why I listen to it. And I remember I got this CD from this kid, and he was through a fence, and he was like, "Hey, man," and I ended up talking to him for about 10 minutes, talking about his music, and he was real depressed. Like just I was like, dude, that was rough, right? And sorry, and he wrote this song called like Delilah or something. Hey there, Delilah, is that right? Yeah. So a couple years later, he had I saw him at like a party in Houston after a show, and he was like, "Hey, man," and I was like, I said, "Hey, congratulations on your success. It's really great." And I didn't know that I had met him before. And he said, "I met you this time, and I gave you that." And I looked back, and I was like, I remember listening to this on the bus, and it was that. And then another band that happened was a band called 10 Years. And when I got that, I listened to it. I was like, I think this is signed. And then I looked around, and they were actually already signed. He had given me a pre-production demo or something. We ended up touring with those guys, which was cool. So, absolutely. And, is there any more questions? Anybody?
I want to know who was your favorite band to tour with?
Helmet.
Yes.
Yeah. Helmet was my favorite band to tour with because we were gigantic Helmet fans and still are. And Paige Hamilton is, I'm trying to find a better word, a dear, dear person. And does anybody know Helmet? I know you do. Yeah. You guys should check out Helmet because they wrote a record a long time ago called Meantime, but they also wrote a record called Betty and Aftertaste and all these other records. But Paige Hamilton is the antithesis of the rocker. Short hair, back in the short shorts because it was back in like the late 80s and stuff. And they were the first band to ever get $1 million publishing deal. And he said to the publisher, he's like, you realize that we're not Metallica, right? Like, no one's going to like our music, but I'll take your $1 million. But Paige Hamilton, he scores music for plays and stuff. He is a musical everything. He just knows everything. What's that?
He's got a degree in jazz.
He does. He's got several degrees. He's always in school. But he goes and he writes this killer, heavy riffed, drop D music. You guys should check out Helmet if you can. But anyway, they were so fun. And back when we toured with them, it was Paige, and then it was Johnny Tempesta from Rob Zombie, and I think he played for like Death or somebody. No, it wasn't Death.
Megadeth for a little bit.
Yeah, he did play for Megadeth. Yeah, and then Frankie Bello from Anthrax was playing bass. So we all became really good friends. That was a cool tour. You got a question?
Yeah, so you kind of already went through your music writing process.
Yeah.
So I'm curious how you actually go about writing the music once you have the lyrics written. How do you make that jive? How do you actually...
Well,
understand what I'm saying?
yeah, I mean, for the most part, the music isn't written until the melody is written. So that could be, say, like, it could be you could hum it or something, and that would be the basic melody. So we won't start writing the music as band. We won't start writing to music until we know there's a melody.
Okay.
Yeah, so, it's like, it's like bum, 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 and he'll be like, nah, 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 nah. Once he figures out that there's that melody, then he'll come, I've got this riff, and then we'll figure out a beat. And strangely enough, most of the stuff I have to play just like a 1 and 3, just like, an AC/DC beat to it for a little while before, just keep it really simple so that he can find his rhythm for it. For a lot of guitarists, does anybody play with a metronome, you guys, guitarists? Yeah, it's really important to play the metronome. Like, it's so important to do it. So for a lot of guitarists, it's hard because, especially if they're singing and playing, that they'll just kind of get off to the races and just get kind of lost. But so for the most part, we don't work on something until it has a melody already. Now, there's always exceptions. Sometimes there's a riff that's just really cool and you have to write it, and we will, and then we just go back, and then you end up having to try and write a melody. And then once you write that melody, you got to try and find words that fit that the syllables and all that. It's kind of hard for us. It's harder to go backwards. But there's a lot of bands, and Every Time I Die is one of the bands that does this, where they write all the music, and the singer comes in after everything's done and writes lyrics and everything. On that last record they did with Joe Barresi, they did that, and you can tell when you listen back to it, it doesn't sound as cohesive because it's not. Once that music's done, if he can't find something that fits that, it's just what it is. And if it doesn't work, it doesn't work, and he's had to write it anyway. So I definitely think you should be together when you do it. That's probably my best advice. Anybody else? Yeah, if that's it, I'll kind of just close out because I just want to leave it on a very positive note in case I didn't. Yeah, your writing is so important, and your playing is so important. You just practice. When Pete first started, he played 8, 9, 10 hours a day for 10 years, every single day. I mean, he could play Eruption, he could play Flight of the Wounded Bumblebee without even looking at his fretboard. And those kinds of, he can't do that anymore. I wish he could, that would be hilarious. It'd be fantastic is what it'd be, but it just takes, you have to know so much stuff, and then you can pick out what it is that you like. And as far as being in bands, I mean, I don't want to discourage anybody at all. I want to encourage you all. It is so important, and for the rest of your life, you'll remember those songs that you've written. You'll remember the bands that you were in, the people you played with. That's all development for the rest of your life, and it's, even if it doesn't become a, air quote, successful thing in your life, that's okay. It doesn't have to be to get something really good out of it. And if I hadn't had the success, wouldn't matter. I would still be doing it today. I'd still be writing songs because I love it. I love being a drummer. I love being part of writing the songs, and I just want to be positive about that. That it doesn't have to be a big endeavor. And as far as playing music goes and going out and playing shows in front of people, take any show you can get. Doesn't matter if it's backyard barbecue, whatever it is. If somebody wants to listen to your music, then play it. And if they want to hear covers, play some covers and play some originals and mix it up, and that's okay too. There's not really anything wrong with anything that you can do. It doesn't matter, like tape or Pro Tools or program drums. I mean, you're all still creating something, and that ultimately that's where you want to be. All right? Anybody else? Bueller? Huh? All right. Thanks for having me, guys.
Thank you so much. This was wonderful.